I watched
Masters of the Universe,
where Monica from Friends and Tom Paris from Star Trek Voyager team up with Ivan Drago from Rocky IV to defeat the evil President Nixon. Masters of the Universe all starts with the toy range, and that all starts with Star Wars. Or rather, it didn't. Mattel turned down the offer to produce the Star Wars toy range. Needless to say, Kenner's Star Wars toy range was a massive success.
Ka-ching!
Mattel eventually came up with a Conan the Barbarian-inspired sci-fi fantasy concept, Lords of Power, which eventually became Masters of the Universe and went on sale in 1982.
Castle Grayskull from the Masters of the Universe collection from Mattel.
It's an amazing story in itself, covered by the excellent documentary Power of Grayskull, the definitive history of He-Man and the Masters of the Universe. Anyway, sales were good, and Cannon Films, hoping to produce bigger productions, snapped up the film rights. As this was happening, the animated series He-Man and the Masters of the Universe would become one of the biggest hits of the 1980s. He-Man was huge.
The most powerful man in the universe!
It changed the way the toy and entertainment industry worked. In the UK, it became illegal to advertise He-Man toys during the He-Man cartoon. Such was the immense promotional power of those 22-minute-long animations, which courted criticism of hyper-consumerism aimed at children.
Landshark vehicle, new from the Masters of the Universe collection, not for use with some figures. Action figures each sold separately.
Cannon had struck gold. This should have been their Star Wars. This should have been their mega franchise. However, the film was a massive flop. But why?
Why is there still resistance?
The film starred Dolph Lundgren as He-Man. He didn't speak much English, and as a result, he has barely any lines, and they come across as wooden.
It's not her you want, it's me.
But maybe I can fix that.
It's not her you want, it's me!
The intention was to dub over his tiny amount of dialogue, but this didn't happen due to costs, which becomes a bit of a theme with the production of this film. His stilted delivery makes He-Man seem like a slab of meat with a sword. It's a sword he barely uses, and when he does, it's generally underwhelming. The sound effects and editing do most of the work to add drama. He-Man is meant to be a leader, a powerful being, someone who holds your attention. Half the time Lundgren looks like he doesn't even want to be there, and he didn't. He hated the entire experience. Unlike Frank Langella as Skeletor. You can tell Langella is having a great time, chewing the scenery and injecting the role with a magnetic charisma. Langella lists this as one of his favourite roles. His son was a huge He-Man fan, and he was able to really shape the character, contributing to the script himself to add some Shakespearean gravitas.
I am not in the giving vein this day.
Skeletor feels like a great villain. The makeup is good, but not great. Sometimes you can see the skeleton mask inflating as Frank exhales. But Langella powers through that with a confidence and swagger which quite honestly carries the film.
I dare anything! I am Skeletor!
Some other Eternians in Master of the Universe work well. Saurod, Blade, Beastman and Karg visually range from pretty decent to impressive. Karg looks insane with that crazy hair, and Saurod with his weird inflatable neck looks the best in my opinion. Beastman is beastie enough. He's perhaps not fantastic, but he certainly doesn't look poor. The makeup is good. I like the look of the creatures, but like He-Man's swordsmanship, they seem a little underwhelming. Evil Lyn nails the look. It's a seductive yet scary aesthetic. A significant part of the look was achieved by the unwieldy armour that she wears, which doesn't seem to provide that much protection, and restricted actress Meg Foster's physical movement so much it left bruises on her groin. Gwildor looks like an evil leprechaun or something. The character is a bit annoying and clearly is meant to be the Orko type character, providing some light relief. But the makeup at least looks good. One of the main problems with the Masters of the Universe film is that by the time the film came out in 1987, the cartoon had been so huge that it was the principal thing which informed the public's perception of what He-Man was. For an audience who had spent 5 years growing up with He-Man, they knew what it looked like, what it felt like, and this wasn't it. It didn't feel familiar. Film is a completely different medium to TV animation. It was always going to be different. 4 of the principal characters were created for the film. I actually don't think that's a problem. Expanding the known universe could have enriched the franchise, and it did, to an extent. Saurod, Blade and Gwildor ended up with their own action figures and comic book appearances. Poor Karg didn't though. Maybe it was that mad hair. I think Mattel missed a trick there. They could have sold Karg figures with a hairbrush alongside their Barbie range.
New Beauty Secrets Karg includes hairbrush and mirror, only from Mattel.
Key to the film not feeling like the Masters of the Universe we knew and loved is the setting. Instead of being set in Eternia, the majority of the film takes place in modern day, as it was then, America. The two main human characters, Julie and Kevin, are brilliantly played. Courtney Cox is a good acting talent, better than the confines that Monica from Friends allowed for, and I've always loved Robert Duncan McNeil in Voyager, where I felt his nuanced performances helped to develop his character beyond the cosmic playboy he started out as. But, as a kid watching Masters of the Universe, I didn't want Kevin and Julie. I wanted He-Man, Orko, and above all else, Battle Cat. We didn't get Orko and Battle Cat, which is probably a good thing. On a limited budget, the effects to bring them to life probably would have looked shite. But we don't really get He-Man either.
Let her go.
I don't think so.
Not the He-Man we wanted to see. In fact, you get the impression that the trio of Julie, Kev, and magic dwarf goblin Gwildor could outwit the henchmen and save the day without He-Man, Man-at-Arms, and Teela. John Cypher as Man-at-Arms gives some nice touches of humanity and a sense that there is a militaristic fantasy world out there. But Man-at-Arms and Teela seem a bit superfluous. Take them out of the film and nothing much changes. Actually, take He-Man out and very little changes, other than a sword fight at the end, which, by the way, director Gary Goddard funded himself because the feature ran out of money. The four baddies seem like fairly dumb henchmen. That troop of baddies, by the way, is the absolute best of Skeletor's warriors.
Your finest warriors.
Which completely undermines any idea that Skeletor commands a deadly fighting force. They never really feel like a threat, and He-Man never really feels like a hero. And that's the biggest problem with this feature. It's a Masters of the Universe film,
Masters of the Universe.
but it doesn't utilise the IP very well. The film is essentially a film about a magic dwarf goblin who invents a key which uses sound to open up portals into anywhere you want to go.
The cosmic key.
He ends up in 1980s America with 3 other people from his world, where they try to find the key which has been discovered by a human who, along with everyone else on Earth, assumes it's a Japanese synthesizer.
This is one of those new Japanese synthesizers.
I don't think this is any synthesizer. It's
Japanese. Oh, no.
Magical Dwarf Goblin and friends have a rival group also trying to find the key, an evil group of monsters. It works as a weird 80s fantasy movie, but it doesn't work as a Masters of the Universe movie. And the problem is that it was presented to an audience who had already had mass exposure to Masters of the Universe from the cartoon, which seemed to be constantly on TV, so they knew what they were expecting. And it wasn't this. The film has issues, and many of those are due to budget constraints. I'm sure the decision to set this mainly in 1980s California rather than the fantastical world of Eternia was one of cost. You don't need to build California, it's already there, or at least the sets already exist. That low budget is evident when we see flying vehicles and lasers being fired, whilst baddies float on platforms Green Goblin style. But there's no police, not even any onlookers, just empty streets. But at least we get to see those flying vehicles and the lasers. And the sets which were built look great. They feel palatial. We also get some good old-fashioned matte paintings which I love to see, creature designs which on the whole work really well, and some excellent costumes. Star Trek, the one with the whales, aka The Voyage Home, was released a year before this and showed that a fish out of water picture could be a big success and provide some great moments of comedy.
Double dumbass on you!
But it doesn't work in Masters of the Universe. Gwildor does provide some humour.
Native clothing.
But he's just too well adjusted to 80s Earth culture. That little dude modifies a car in about an hour. He's a magical engineering genius. Like I alluded to before, with a script redraft, Julie, Kev and Gwildor could have been the triumphant triumvirate. The rest aren't needed. The shift to 1980s America is barely referenced, other than the initial few moments.
We could be anywhere. Any planet in the galaxy.
Thankfully, Eternians have exactly the same words for everything that we have.
Just tell us where that policeman was headed and we'll take it from there.
The score for this film was done by Oscar-winning Bill Conti, composer of the incredible Rocky and the Right Stuff scores. But this feels very derivative. The opening music sounds very John Williams, specifically Superman. And some of the other music is incredibly Star Wars-esque. Perhaps this was intentional, because the film does seem to draw from Star Wars visuals. This scene here with Skeletor walking with helmeted soldiers flanking his path could be a scene from Star Wars, and it sounds like it. It's not just me, is it? That does sound a lot like Vader's Death March. Speaking of sounds, Skeletor screams without opening his mouth. But maybe I can fix that. And one for you 80s kids here, does this sound like Kit from Knight Rider doing a turbo boost?
Hang on!
The score is big and orchestral though. It elevates the film and stops it from sounding cheap. Clearly, there was some great use of budget, it just didn't go far enough. They tried to make cuts where possible, even getting Dolph to do his own stunts. They said they struggled to find a convincing body double, which I do believe, but it did also save them some money. Cannon Films were hemorrhaging cash at this point. In addition to buying the Masters of the Universe film rights, they also bought the rights to Superman. It's Cannon Films who produced the awful Superman 4 movie, which although made money, it was nowhere near what Cannon hoped for, and it was released just a month before this film. That meant that Cannon Films owned the film rights to two of the hottest franchises of that decade, but within the period of a few weeks, the resulting film output was panned by critics and massively underperformed. Instead of creating a new era of big-name blockbusters for the Cannon Group, it almost sunk the company. It did manage some less financially ambitious successes, but the damage was done, and Cannon folded a few years later. The truth is though, Superman and Masters of the Universe were already on the wane by the time Cannon got their films out. Superman came out in 1978, it was massive in the 80s, but Superman 3 was a bit of a disappointment, and Indiana Jones was the cool thing now. And the Masters of the Universe toy line had seen sales slow significantly by 1987. Transformers were way more exciting.
The Transformers, each sold separately from Hasbro.
And as for the cartoon, well, it wasn't feeling as fresh as it once was. Thundercats had become the new He-Man, and something turtly awesome was just coming out of the sewers. And by the way, turtly is exactly how someone in Hull would say that word. Americans, if you don't believe me, just Google Hull accent. Oh no, I've burnt me toast. I love you, Hull. Even the sight of Courtney Cox in this sexy nightwear wasn't enough to save the film. It looks like she's borrowed it from her nan.
No, Dad!
You're bright and early?
The plot is flimsy. The cosmic key to travel through space feels like an obvious plot device just to get the film characters into 1980s America. The story of Julie feeling guilty about her parents' death on an aeroplane feels a bit shoehorned in just to inject some melodrama and to provide a stronger ending when she ends up travelling back in time to prevent them from boarding the plane. But presumably, everyone else still died.
No one died.
Knowing that the magic key can be used to travel through time as well as space makes it too ridiculous. It does make you wonder why Gwildor doesn't just go back in time to stop Skeletor's reign of terror in the first place. Anyway, Masters of the Universe. In the mid to late 80s, this was a disappointing translation of a well-known franchise to the big screen. It just wasn't He-Man. The film didn't work. The 80s had been a golden era of fantasy films, so this didn't compare to the likes of family-friendly fare such as Neverending Story, Labyrinth, and The Princess Bride. And that familiar characters out of time and place type film had been done way better by Star Trek a year before.
Everybody remember where we parked.
But outside of the He-Man bubble of the 80s, this is quite an enjoyable, silly fantasy film. I've spoken a lot about the budget issues, but for most part, the film doesn't look low budget. It has definite highlights, Evil Lyn and Skeletor.
I have you to thank for all these troubles. Why?
The score is derivative but sounds cinematic, the creature effects are good, and 1980s nostalgia is cool.
What do you think?
Maybe if Cannon hadn't overstretched themselves with parallel funding for Superman 4, this could have been given more focus and a bump in budget. It could have saved the film and Cannon themselves. A sequel was worked on, Casting decisions were even made. No Lundgren or Langella for the follow-up. And $2 million were invested in it. But Cannon were bruised from the critical and box office performance of Masters of the Universe. The script, cast and costumes created were reused for a cheaper feature, Cyborg, featuring Cannon's hottest new star, Jean-Claude Van Damme.
Hello!
The DNA of Masters of the Universe is evident in Cyborg. In a way, it lived on through that film. You can almost see the swords and sorcery. I do think if Cannon hadn't paid for the rights to Masters of the Universe, they could still have made this film without He-Man and his crew, and kept the film pretty much as it was. And it would have been a fun family fantasy flick without the burden of expectation. And goodbye.